I'm going to detail for you 76 years of Thor in comics. Okay? Thor is possibly the top Marvel character right now in the cinematic universe just because of these two movies. And that is Thor Ragnarok and Avengers of Infinity War probably has the best arc in that whole movie. There's like 35 characters in it. Thor actually began in comics in March. Actually, Thor began in DC Comics way back in the time of World War II in Adventure Comics 1975. And he was the villain from Valhalla. And he fought Sandman and his trusty sidekick, Sandy. And the thing about this is that it was drawn by the greatest comic artist of all time, Jack Kirby, way back in 1942. And some of us are familiar with Jack Kirby's work in Marvel Comics, but he also did early DC and several other publishers, whatever would make him a buck, really. Okay, so this is the DC Comics Thor. Next incarnation, oh yeah, it's also DC. Tales of the Unexpected, issue number 16, 15 years later, also drawn by Jack Kirby, believe it or not. You see nothing on the cover that says there's a Thor story in here, but you flip the page and you get this, the Magic Hammer. Okay, and this is a story that Jack Kirby did. And I'd like you to note the shape and style of the hammer, of Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. Okay? This was 1957, 5 years before Thor appeared in Marvel Comics. So this is Jack Kirby just showing a little bit about, and we'll compare that to a later slide. Okay, we ready? Well, it's not quite Marvel yet. 2 years later, Thor actually appeared as a foe of Batman and Robin in number 127. The Hammer of Thor wasn't really Thor, but you know, this was the cover, and not drawn by Jack Kirby, different artist this stuff. Okay, finally, we get to the Marvel Universe. The very first appearance and origin of Thor in Journey into Mystery, number 83. Journey into Mystery was a monster, sci-fi, horror comic that had nearly a 7-year run. It was well established. Marvel had introduced the Fantastic Four, Hulk, and the month before this, the Amazing Spider-Man. And so they thought, well, we'll put Thor, we're not going to give him his own magazine. This is going to be Journey into Mystery featuring, or in this case, introducing the mighty Thor. So he started actually with a bit of a number advantage, okay? Number 83. If you think about that, that's why Thor was the first hero in Marvel Comics to have an issue 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500, because he had an 82 issue or number advantage. Thor fights the Stone Men from Saturn. Okay, and if you saw Thor Ragnarok, the director, Taika Waititi, played Korg. Korg was a Cronus. Cronus is the Greek representation of the Roman god Saturn. And so the Stone Men from Saturn. This is where meek, mild, and lame Donald Blake, he's a physician, finds this cane in a cave, and somehow a rock has gotten into the cave front, and he's trying to move the rock with the cane, and doggone it, he hits it and transforms into the mighty Thor. So this was the very first issue of Thor, a couple of the pages. What I find the most interesting about this is that Stan Lee, bless his heart, on the last page misspells Thor's name. So that's kind of cool. Journey into Mystery introduced many of the characters that Marvel is using in its cinematic universe right now, including 2 issues later, probably the greatest Marvel villain of all, not just in the movies, but also in the comics, Loki. Just terrific character. 104 of Journey into Mystery introduces Surtur, who was in Thor Ragnarok, and This is the first time we see a representation of one of the frost giants from Jotunheim. That's Skag, the frost giant. This is the first time in issue 112 that Thor fights the Hulk. This was an early crossover because this battle between Thor and the Hulk actually began in the third issue of the Avengers. And in the first movie, we meet the Destroyer. When the Destroyer first appeared in Journey into Mystery 118, he was the indestructible Destroyer. So a lot of the characters came from very early issues of Thor, way back in the 60s. Journey into Mystery went on for a few more issues. Out came 125, and then for issue 126, Marvel changed it to just the Mighty Thor. So this is, today if they did that, they would have said, we're ending Journey into Mystery, and this is Thor #1. But they didn't. They kept the numbering, and so we have Thor 126 fighting Hercules. Guardians of the Galaxy, the second movie, introduced us to Ego, the living planet. He's been around for a long time. He first appeared in Thor 133, way back in the mid-60s. And then the villain of Thor Ragnarok, Hela, the party-colored goddess of death. In the movie, she is supposedly Thor's older sister. But mythologically and in the comics, she's actually Loki's daughter. Okay, he has 3 kids by this giantess, and one of them is Hela. So Thor moved through the 100s, moved through the 200s, and then hit the 300s and kind of bogged down. Marvel wasn't giving the comic their best authors or their best artists, and so enter this guy. This is Walter Simonson, okay? And Walter Simonson walked into the editor's office and he said, look, we all know that you're going to cancel Thor because it's the worst selling comic. Give me a shot at it. And the editor said, I don't think a new artist is going to make any difference. She's not just the artist. I want to write it too. I want to do it all. I want to do the cover. I want to do the art, and I want to write it. Walt Simonson, bless his heart, in Thor number 337, introduced us to Beta Ray Bill. And Simonson had a really good run. He did Thor from issue 337 to 382. And he had some fun during that time. One of the villains that appeared in the second Thor movie, The Dark World, he's not on the cover. Malekith the Accursed is a Simonson creation in Thor 344. Simonson also turned Thor into a frog. Thor, Frog of Thunder. So that was kind of fun. And Thor fought his mythological nemesis, the Midgard serpent Jormungand. This is an interesting book because what Simonson did was, instead of doing the traditional panels like 4 to a page or 6 to a page or 9 to a page or whatever, he did what we call splash pages on every page. And they were full-page illustrations. And I mean, to read this book, it's really cool. And some of them were even 2-page illustrations. I mean, you open a comic and see that, that's pretty cool. That is really cool. So, the great Walter Simonson. This is him last year at San Diego Comic-Con getting his Eisner Hall of Fame award. Now, if you permit me, a little bit of a sidebar. I'm not going to go into the story or anything like that, but I'm an astronomer, and so I was very pleased earlier this year to be fundamental in getting an asteroid named for Walt Simonson. So that was cool. He thought that was cool. In fact, the way I put it to him was, long after Ragnarok is forgotten, your asteroid will still be going around the sun. That was cool. Okay, Thor goes through the 400s, hits the 500s, and Marvel says, we're done. That's it. We're killing him. 502. That's it. The end of Thor. You've heard of comic book death, right? Okay, 2 years later, he's back, but not in issue 503, actually in issue 1 of volume 2. Okay, so this is issue 1, volume 2, and it had an 85 issue run, and then all right, we'll kill him for sure this time. Until volume 3. Volume 3, for me, is kind of special because one of my favorite authors, J. Michael Straczynski, started this. He did like the first half dozen or so issues. J. Michael Straczynski did, if you've ever heard or seen Babylon 5, pretty much wrote all of those episodes. Wrote the screenplay for the first Thor movie, also wrote the initial screenplay for World War Z, which would have been a way better movie than it was. But anyway, I mean, it was entertaining, but it certainly wasn't the book. And then, a few years after this, Marvel lost its mind!
Take that back.
Wait a minute. Oh, except for all of the wonderful thoughts that went before this talk. No, they actually, boy, this really made news. I mean, like New York Times news when they changed Thor into a female. I thought it was actually pretty cool, kinda. But you know, they've gone back and forth and things like that. But bold move to take a character that's been in your comics for more than 50 years as male, and you don't just turn him into a fraud for a couple issues, you literally turn him female. And that was actually pretty cool. 76 years, the God of Thunder. That, as they say, is that.